Hello, my name is Wanda Deschamps. I am an openly autistic entrepreneur, and I'm so pleased to be with you today to deliver this keynote for Awesome 2021. I wish to begin by saying that I'm on the Haldeman Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations, including 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. It is the inequalities caused by colonialism and other forms of systemic oppression that motivate me to turn this injustice to action by supporting all historically marginalized groups on their journeys of self-determination. This includes Indigenous peoples, and it includes the disability population, of which I am a proud member. I officially became a member of the disability population at the age of 46 when I was diagnosed with autism. However, I now know I was born autistic. I just did not know I had a different brain makeup from the mainstream population. Sometimes I'm asked, you were only diagnosed with autism at midlife? Didn't you know you were different? And I respond and I say that I knew I was different. However, I attribute it to various reasons, including differences in my family structure from my peers and other aspects of my environment. I came from a big family. I was the youngest of 10 children. My parents were both strong advocates for gender equality. That was really progressive for the time. They were also well-educated and well-traveled. Here is a photo for you of me when I was 5, taken when we were in England. We lived as a family for a year. I actually started school there at grade primary. When we returned to Canada, say by around grade 4, I did notice that I struggled interacting with my peers. Because of this, I was a target for teasing and bullying. So to help combat, one of my approaches was observing and copying the behaviors of other children, especially popular students and especially girls. I did this in order to fit in. Looking back, I realized that I was masking my autistic characteristics and traits in an attempt to belong. And it worked to a degree because I did learn to fit in more, and I fit in more in junior high and high school. Although during those periods, I did still struggle socially, and I struggled academically in some ways as well. Although my marks improved in high school, I was able to focus on subjects that were of particular interest, as well as register for subject tracks that suited my abilities. During this time, my home and personal life were complicated and stressful in many ways. Despite it all, I persevered and I graduated from high school in Nova Scotia in 1988. I entered university the following year and pursued a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology with a minor in history. And I had a wide range in my marks. In some courses, I did okay, and in some I didn't do well at all. And this really troubled me. I entered counseling with a psychologist for that reason, due to stressful family matters and for my own anxiety. However, autism never crossed my or anyone else's mind. This is a reflection of the overall environment relating to autism specifically and disability generally in the late 80s and 90s. There just wasn't the level of awareness, and we didn't have the programs and supports in place, like for instance, we do in schools and post-secondary institutions today. After I graduated from university, I attended private business college in Halifax from fall 1992 to 1993, and I performed quite well with one exception in a course that I found challenging. However, my attentiveness to detail was rewarded, and I was delighted after the ambiguity of a liberal arts education to discover the straightforward yes and no answers of my courses, especially business accounting. In fact, after the ambiguity of my undergrad experiences, this was all a relief. After graduation, I began my career in the charitable sector in Halifax. I also got married and divorced, and then I met my second husband, Ryan. We got married and started a family. And from the outside looking in, it was like we had everything. In fact, if you ask people who knew us during that period, they would probably say like we did appear like we had it all. However, there was always something gnawing at me. When I was 40, we relocated to the prairies. And despite the happy face that I consistently presented, I can only describe the time as one of complete upheaval. Our older son was diagnosed with autism the first winter we were there, and around that time, I noticed significant challenges for me at work. On the one hand, and outwardly, I was successful. I had entered the most senior position of my career, and I was receiving recognition for my subject matter knowledge and application. On the other hand, and inwardly, I was highly anxious and often confused and unsure about how I came across to others. In some contexts, I noticed I had to work very hard to connect with some individuals, and I struggled to communicate, for example, when attaching words to concepts. I noticed that I preferred discussions focused on strategy or high level. I thoroughly detested office gossip and petty politics, and I became frustrated when ideas and thoughts, which I thought were basic and fundamental, were not understood or even followed through in basic ways. Deep down, I actually thought I was stupid. This goes back to some of the challenges I had, which I shared with you from junior high and high school, especially when I floundered in some courses in junior high. So I would ask myself, if I understand this and I'm stupid, then why do others not understand? You can maybe imagine how these behaviors cause barriers in some working relationships. Either individually or combined, these factors led me to be completely misunderstood on occasion, despite my intentions, which I knew deep down were good. Remember, we had relocated to a whole new region. So I was meeting and interacting and working with so many new people. I really noticed the stark contrast between people who sincerely approached me with an open mind, did not prejudge, did not succumb to biases, those who truly took my best interests seriously and wanted me and us to be successful, and those who prejudged and succumbed to biases, meaning that they mistook my intentions, or worse, projected intentions on me that I did not even have. Within all these demands of my work and a home life that was very stressful, I enrolled in my master's in history at the University of Regina, first on a part-time basis in 2013, and then a full-time basis the following year after I left my job. I entered counseling when I was a full-time student because of concerns I had about myself, and particularly my anxiety. It did help in the short term. However, again, autism did not cross my mind, and it didn't cross the mind of my health professional either. On the student side, it was not always easy. I had to produce multiple versions of essays and other assignments before they were acceptable for submission. And like early experiences I just shared with you and in school and at work, I did notice that I continually struggled to attach words to concepts. My marks did not necessarily reflect the effort I invested in my work. However, despite all of this, I passed, and at almost age 45, I fulfilled my lifelong dream of earning a graduate degree. By this time, we had relocated to Ontario, and it seemed like another great position. 1 year into my time at my new job, I noticed there were a wide range of reactions to me. And this was exacerbated by the sensory overload I experienced sometimes. I would later learn that I really suffered from a lack of self-awareness, and I definitely suffered from an underlying lack of self-esteem due to experiences rooted in childhood, some of which I just shared with you, mistreatment and bullying by my peers. At work, I constantly welcomed and received feedback, shifted and modified my behavior accordingly, committed to self-improvement. Despite all this, my vulnerabilities were detected and frankly, at times exploited, leaving me feeling as if my rights as a human being were irrelevant simply because I was different. No surprise that my mental health deteriorated, especially towards the end of 2016 and the winter of 2017. So by May of 2017, I had a complete breakdown at work. Our younger son was diagnosed with autism on May 24th, 2017. And at a previously scheduled doctor's appointment the next day, I asked my family physician for my own psychological assessment, explaining to her, I think I have it too. And on July 25th, 2017, I received my diagnosis of autism and thereby started my journey of self-discovery. I was not willing to tolerate behaviors and mistreatment that I had tolerated previously. This is part of looking at everything through a new prism. So one way I channeled this was by seeking workplace accommodation. It didn't work out, and eventually I lost my job, putting me on a path of committing to living life as what I describe as real Wanda. This is according to my own values and principles. Part of it is telling my story to increase awareness and acceptance so that it may lead to a smoother path for others. One example is that my story of undiagnosed autism ran in the Broadview magazine April 2020 issue for Autism Acceptance Month. And this excerpt here from it was tweeted on Autism Acceptance Day. And I really did feel like my brain was whole for the first time after I received my autism diagnosis. Another key part of living life as real Wanda is entrepreneurship. When I launched Liberty Co. and began sharing my story, more and more I realized how fortunate I've been. As an autistic woman who's been employed throughout her career, I am actually one of the lucky ones. And perhaps you know this unfortunate reality that the majority of the autistic population is either unemployed or underemployed. And this is a real shame because this means our skills and talents are going untapped and we're unable to make the contributions that we wish to make and we know we can make. So my firm, Liberty Co., is focusing on increasing the participation level of the neurodiverse population in the workforce with a special emphasis on autism due to my own diagnosis and the diagnoses of my sons. I want a smoother path for others, as I've shared with you. And so one way I'm attempting to make this happen is by working within the IDEA framework and advocating for avenues towards greater IDEA. Yes, I've learned to add an A for accessibility, because if we are truly going to have inclusive, diverse, and equitable workplaces, we also need accessible workplaces, meaning they're reachable, enterable, and approachable for everyone. And this also means including your brain makeup. And traditionally, we have thought about accessibility from a disability standpoint as perhaps removing barriers to physical access to make venues reachable, enterable, and approachable. But given the majority of disabilities are invisible, such as in my case, we need to provoke new thinking about accessibility. Within autistic workplace accessibility and inclusion, I am particularly committed to inclusive leadership, autistic entrepreneurship, and employee retention, all with a focus on gender equity. I say that autistic talent belongs at all levels of the organization, from the boardroom to the C-suite to the office cubicle. Autistic talent can flourish when our abilities and aptitudes are appreciated and matched with organizational goals and priorities. To this end, a story that has had a really positive impact on me is that of UK executive Charlotte Valeur, pictured here for you. Of the many things that Charlotte is doing, she is helping to establish the Institute of Neurodiversity, which is set to launch later this year. Charlotte is championing all her efforts through her lived experience as a woman who has recently publicly shared her adult autism diagnosis. Entrepreneurship is also an employment pathway for autistics, such as it is for Sasha Borisma, pictured here. However, I want to help ensure that autistics are pulled into entrepreneurship and not pushed in. In other words, I want it to be a choice, and not because autistics have been pushed out of the workforce due to ableism and other forms of discrimination. That is why I'm particularly committed to avenues for employee retention. After employees have been hired, we need to ensure that all the supports are there so that they'll stay in the workplace and be retained as valuable employees. So given these areas of emphasis in my work stemming from my own diagnosis, you might not be surprised to know that I'm sometimes asked, do I wish I had received my diagnosis earlier? Yes, sometimes I do wish I had received my diagnosis earlier. However, it is indeed better late than never, and I'm grateful to have received it in my lifetime. I realize that underdiagnosis still persists across the autism spectrum, especially among girls and women. And that is one of the reasons I participate in autistic research whenever I can. And I'm particularly committed to research into autistic women's experiences in the workforce. My diagnosis helped me develop a level of self-awareness that I did not even know was possible. And the benefits to me are really impossible to exaggerate. In fact, I say self-awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself. So I want to help others ensure these positive experiences are available for them. Self-awareness has led me to self-assurance, again, at a level that I didn't even know was possible. And it is helping enable me to be a proud autism mom, modeling for my children to be unashamed, unafraid, and undeterred as a disabled autistic woman. Which takes me to something else I wanted to share with you. And that is sometimes when I'm interviewed, I'm asked for a piece of advice or a word to pass on to others. And when I'm asked that, I respond with believe. It's a word that really resonates with me. And I say it because I did not believe in myself for so much of my life. I did not believe in myself because I did not know myself. Although it's interesting, often in my life, I appeared as confident. And if you ask people to describe me from what they knew, they would say Wanda did appear as confident, but that was outward. Confidence and self-security are different things because confidence is something we exert outwardly, and self-security is something that's inward. So believe in yourself. It's really important. I encourage you to do so and to surround yourself with people who believe in you. It's something that's really made a difference for me. You've likely noticed by now that my overall message is one of hope and optimism, and that is for several reasons, including more and more disability inclusion is being recognized as necessary. In fact, some say that the 2020s belong to disability justice. To that end, I was delighted to learn about the launch of the We 15. This campaign is centered on change for the 15% of us worldwide who have a disability. At a time when diversity and inclusion are receiving more and more attention, we with disabilities are also advocating for equity and equality. Because along with a range of social, racial, and ethnic backgrounds and differences in genders and social orientations, since disability is a dimension of diversity, and like movements for race, gender, and sexual orientation, we want to have a movement all persons with disabilities can rally behind. This is a global movement launched just before the Tokyo Paralympic Games, and it is publicly campaigning for disability, visibility, inclusion, and accessibility. And a founding partner of We the 15 is the Valuable 500. And I'm raising it because if you follow me, perhaps you know that I often speak and write under the banner, The Inclusion Revolution. This is a worldwide movement launched in 2018 to spearhead broader thinking about disability, especially disability employment. Founded by Caroline Casey and Paul Poland, it is revolutionizing disability inclusion through business leadership and opportunity, so that the majority of the disability population will not remain unemployed and underemployed. And that includes the autistic population. It is named the Valuable 500 because they have secured commitment from 500 national and multinational private sector corporations to put disability employment on the highest decision agendas of those organizations. Because the potential of us, we the 15% of the world's population, that's over 1 billion people worldwide, should not be ignored, and it's not going to be ignored. So now I'm going to issue an invitation to you, and it's the way I close every presentation that I make. I'm asking you, in this post-Me Too era of Black Lives Matter and Indigenous reconciliation with disability justice as the burgeoning social movement, will you join the inclusion revolution? Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of Awesome 2021. If you wish to, I hope you consider reaching out to me, either messaging me or connecting with me on social. And most importantly, have an awesome conference.